Según John Williams, los que somos compositores de películas tenemos que ser capaces de escribir una pieza subliminal si la escena requiere de ello, donde la escena debe ser sentida y la atmósfera que se describe es más sensual que intelectual, y al mismo tiempo tenemos que tener la capacidad de escribir una pieza musical que nos demande alguna clase de ligación intelectual si es necesario producir eso. El compositor de películas tiene que ser capaz de conscientemente hacer las diferencias. ¿Qué estamos haciendo en esta escena? ¿Qué clase de atención vamos a pedir del auditorium? Y si deseamos algo del todo, este es parte del arsenal que un artista musical trae con él y debería estar en todos nosotros. No son muchas las personas que pueden pensar en películas como Star Wars, Tiburón, Indiana Jones o Superman sin escuchar la música de John Williams. Sus partituras han trascendido a las películas y se han convertido en las bandas sonoras para una generación entera, además de identificarse con las películas más prestigiosas y exitosas en la historia de Hollywood. Acompáñeme a escuchar el cine.
Suppose I'm buying that for you, too.
Actually, I've had a good long time to flip through it. Why don't you give it a try?
The number 23, a heart-wrenching odyssey into paranoia. One of the most horrifying metamorphoses ever told.
I'm buying this for you.
Chapter 1. All I could think about was the number. I met you when I was...
23.
And the day we met was?
September 14th.
9/14. 14 plus 9 is?
23. Is it all just a coincidence?
I don't know. So what is 23?
There are 23 axioms to Euclid's geometry. The human body consists of 46 chromosomes, 23 from each parent. 2 divided by 3, 0.666, number of the devil.
So is 23 a blessing or a curse? I was born at 11:12 p.m. 11 plus 12. 23. My birthday, 2-3. Driver's license, social security number. It's all 23. It's if it's imitating my life.
You've concerned yourself with minutia, and you've drawn wild conclusions from them.
Every 23rd word on every 23rd page.
I warn you, hell is waiting.
The number.
What does that mean?
You know.
Waco, Texas, and the Oklahoma City bombing both happened on April 19th. You gotta get out, it's coming for you. 4 plus 19 is 23.
This is not who you are.
The Hiroshima bomb was dropped at 8:15.
Dad!
8 plus 15 is 23. 13 years of lies! No more!
Don't do this to us.
I dreamt. I killed you.
You would never hurt anyone.
How do you know?
Casi siempre al hablar de una película se la considera una experiencia visual. De todos los elementos que conforman el altamente complejo sistema de hacer cine, el menos tangible es la música. Una película como Tiburón en 1975 planteaba el desafío de encontrar la manera de caracterizar algo que está bajo el agua con música más que con efectos de sonido.
This idea of characterizing the shark musically, these low thumping ostinato notes in the bass, you know, were the result of a very simple idea that I had, that I thought that the shark should be represented by something in sound or in music, probably music, because there's no sound underneath the water, we thought. Today you might do it with sound effects, but I thought maybe some kind of driving thing in the bottom of the orchestra might indicate this the mindless attack of the shark. It's all instinct. There's no real intelligence behind it. It's an unstoppable bump, 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 bump. This thing comes at you, and whatever you can't fight it off without destroying it, because of this relentless drive that it has.
When he finally played the music for me on the piano, he previewed the main Jaws theme. I expected to hear something kind of weird and melodic, and really kind of tonal but eerie and of another world, almost a bit like outer space, inside, inner space, under the water. And what he played me instead with two fingers on the lower keys was dun, 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 dun. And at first I began to laugh. I thought he had a great sense of humor. I thought he was putting me on. And he said, no, that's the theme to Jaws. And I said, play it again. He played it again. And he played it again. And it suddenly seemed right.
One could alter the speed of this ostinato. It could be note, 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 note. Any kind of alteration of speed to very slow, very fast, very soft, very loud. All of these things could manipulate the moment to illustrate that the shark was at the highest pitch of frenzy or something lower. And this simple dramatic device seemed to be what we needed.
Part of the genius of John Williams is how he spots music and how he places music in a movie. That's sort of something that's never discussed about the art of composition, is the placement of that composition. And John did not want music to celebrate a red herring. He only wanted music to signal the actual arrival of the shark.
There were opportunities in the movie to advertise the shark with the music, and also opportunities when we don't have the music and the audience has a sense of an absence. They sense the absence of the shark because they don't hear the thump-thump, because we've conditioned them to do that. But then you may go one step further, and we know now the shark really is there, but we haven't advertised it with music, so his attack comes out of silence. And now, because you've been conditioned to have the music every time when you don't, and the shark arrives, it's even more terrifying. It's one of the beauties of the film medium that when you combine music with this kind of visual thing, you can get this association in people's minds. I think if you did it musically just in a concert piece, it wouldn't have the same effect. It's the combination of the visual and the situation, this being the shark or the knifing scene in Hitchcock's Psycho, combined with the notes. That combination of sound and image forming a memory, which can then be referred back to. My favorite cue in Jaws has always been that barrel chase, where the shark approaches the boat and they harpoon the animal, and he takes the line out, and the barrels lift off the boat, and the music accelerates and becomes very exciting. The boat turns to follow the shark as he's pulling the line out, and the music becomes very heroic, and there's a Congolian fanfare, if you like, of triumph as they're going through the waves, chasing the shark.
Bring it on the barrel! I'm coming around again!
And suddenly the shark dives down, the music deflates and gets slower and slower and soft. the deflation and disappointment of the realization that the shark hasn't been captured. It's all illustrated in this one area where the music is able to follow all that dramatic outline and punctuate it.
La obra del compositor John Williams incluye actualmente cerca de 100 películas, además de muchos trabajos para concierto, y sus composiciones más famosas son el producto de su trabajo con dos directores como Steven Spielberg y George Lucas.
E.T. phone home.
Well, let's go on and go back, shall we?
And music's out. Music's out.
Okay.
We are OUT at that point.
Okay, well, let's go back and cue this little thing.
Great. And I've always felt that Johnny was my musical rewrite artist. He'd come in, see my movie, and rewrite the whole damn thing musically and make it much better than I did. And he can take a moment and just uplift it, and he can take a tear that's just forming in your eye and he can cause it to drip.
The first time I saw E.T., the bicycle over the moon wasn't there because it was a special effect shot, it comes in later. So the composer doesn't have the benefit of all the beautiful visuals and the dissolves and all the rest of it that's put in later. What do we have to do musically to accompany a thing like that? I look for melody, all these intervals that reach up all the time, to stretch the musical grammar, to give this kind of feeling. And then in performance, the same thing. I don't know what that's more like ballet, that's more like a certain kind of energy of how you've got a 100-piece symphony orchestra, how do you make it feel like it's going to come right off the floor and not be all these heavy people playing violins, but with lift. And so that's a kind of immediate balletic or even athletic goal of the music in a scene like that. And when you get that feeling, you fill your heart with it because it's like a deep breath of wonderful air and you feel free. And it's affirmed that you have a creature that you can fly with that is not of our own species, but of our own spiritual oneness that we come together and join, and we go over the moon. Fantastic idea, and it needs great sweep in the music and great feeling of freedom. Freedom being, in this case, the loss of gravity. Steven is very comfortable with the use of music in his films. AI, I think, has over 2-hour scores. But his particular kind of lyricism and his particular kind of emotional palette that he creates seems to lend itself to music to the extent that we don't feel we're taken away from the state of reality or the reality that he's trying to conjure for us by the presence of the orchestra, which can happen with another kind of film. So the music, I think, is quite schizophrenic, at least in my mind, because you have very tonal aspects, some string in the beginning. You have the piano at the end. Then there are sections that are very atonal, which is to say dissonant or without the gravity of the tonal system to root it. Some sort of postmodern things for this flying of the helicopter. A lot of use of electronics, much more than I usually do.
Be careful, David. This is not a toy.
Also, you have a snippet of Tchaikovsky. And a bit of Rosenkavalier you even hear when they go into Rouge City, which incidentally, this quotation of Richard Strauss was the one piece of music that Stanley Kubrick requested that Steven leave in the film. We don't know why. The waltz from Rosenkavalier of Richard Strauss. So very difficult for me to find a place where it fit. But there's a section for about 30 seconds where they drive through those great faces, you know, across the bridge into Rouge City, where on top of my own music I threaded the waltz theme from Rosenkavalier as an homage to Kubrick completely, without fully realizing what the connection in his mind was. So it's a very eclectic score and a very voluminous score, very different from the things that Steven and I have done before, with the possible exception maybe of Close Encounters. I think it's closer to that in its timbral aspect. There are several melodies which are, I would call them cantilena almost. The most prominent one is the one that's played at the end. And I wrote half a dozen of these examples, not fully extended, and played them for Steven. We kept working on the last scene, the death of the mother, and I would play these themes on the piano and we would lay them against the film, and the one that we finally used seemed to both of us to be the right expression. It's very simple, although it has its complexities, and it's also very direct, and that scene is about 7 minutes long, so it's a long stretch of material for a cantilena of that particular type. If it works, it's the result of our being able to make some kind of emotional connection with associations of lullaby, of a connection between a child and a mother. It seemed like the right solution. I think the thing that's unique about AI, for me at least, is the essential spiritual aspects of what it was examining. The idea that to be able to love someone is the thing that defines humanity in the end. At the end of the film, when David, who's been looking for his mother and wanting to be human all these centuries now, when his mother has her final biological death, he is able to die at the end of the film, and thereby achieving his humanity. By being able to die, he's proven himself to be human, which is the one thing that we all share, we all eventually will do. So these are subjects that are abstract and spiritual and very personal, and they go right to where music can speak to. Music is really about this kind of thing at its core.
Sea utilizando una orquesta sinfónica completa o algún instrumento o recurso electrónico, escribir música para el cine es un trabajo de precisión. Cada película es diferente en sus necesidades y problemas, y cada compositor trae con él sus propios talentos y soluciones para darlos a luz. Los compositores exitosos son aquellos con creatividad y sentido del drama, y que se sientan atraídos por encontrar nuevas formas de comunicar lo que solo la música puede hacer. Según su director Steven Spielberg, su película La Guerra de los Mundos es una historia sencilla, es un relato de supervivencia sobre un padre que trata de mantener sus hijos a salvo. Es sobre los elementos básicos de la naturaleza humana enmarcados en un hecho sobrenatural extraordinario.
This is the first movie I've ever done with John Williams where John did not get to see the picture before he began writing the music. This has never happened to us before. John is writing the music in a semi-vacuum. When he first sat down to watch the movie, I only had 6 to 12 reels complete. So he could only see 6 reels. So he saw 60 minutes of the movie and began writing. He never saw the last 60 minutes of the movie.
It is true that Stephen's other space epics are all very warm and welcoming in terms of the visitors. That really is a change for him, to go in War of the Worlds where you have these machines coming that bring the aliens here that are so destructive. An interesting deviation for Stephen. And so it creates a different musical opportunity and a different role for the orchestra and for the music. And there are a few sections in there, a few cuts to the alien machines where the orchestra does a grand gesture of the classic monster film. But we just sort of doff our cap to give a little referential nod to the genre. But I think, for example, the intersection scene where the alien machine first emerges is, I think, one of the most terrifying things I've ever seen. We have orchestral gestures and sound effects, but some of them also have a women's chorus. There are women making a kind of a glissando that goes up, almost like a shriek. The addition of something human, even though we don't exactly know that it's a women's chorus, gives us some feeling here that just a zap doesn't quite have. So you recognize some pain in it, even though the victims are not privileged enough even to say ouch. They're gone before they can say that. Humanizing the experience, so to speak. There are some male voices in some sections of the basement because we have some very interesting sound effects for the probe and also for the aliens themselves. But if you dig really deeply into that soundtrack and music track, there are men singing in that. It's even below the Russian bass. It goes into almost a register of Tibetan monks, which is the lowest kind of pitch that our bodies are able to make. And we have a group of the men doing that very, very softly. The film begins musically with an electronically assembled group of sounds that I put on paper. I would just write it like you'd write an orchestra score, describing what I think the sounds can be. And then we would, with synthesizer, develop those sounds and put it together step by step. Only 2 places, the beginning, which accompanies the Morgan Freeman narration.
No one would have believed in the early years of the 21st century that our world was being watched by intelligences greater than our own.
And equally at the end of the film, the end of the Boston street, and the camera proceeds along the limb of, we think, a dead tree. And one of the buds in the tree is alive, and we see that the life is there. And you hear the cyclically closing, again, Morgan Freeman's voice. And again, the orchestra sort of morphs into electronics.
For neither do men live nor die in vain.
I'm not fooling around. I got a busy day ahead of me. Close it.
The role of the music and the role of the orchestra really as they begin to drive away from the city is to provide a propulsion that is pulling us forward and helping us to try to escape, although there isn't any escape.
You saw we're under attack!
And the orchestra has the same primary function in what is a fantastic scene, I think, the ferry scene. What the orchestra can do is provide this driving beat, a propulsion, a pulse that sometimes we hear, sometimes we don't hear, but it's always there and we can feel it. And when there's room for it to come forward and push us forward, we will do that. It's probably the most complicated sequence, which could point to the sort of cooperation between editing, in this case Michael Kahn and myself. Stephen is always kind of in the middle and hovering between the two. The music will do this, and the editing will do that, and make his suggestions. But that is a very interesting scene. Certainly a very memorable image is when Ray's character comes out of the destroyed house and he sees the crashed plane there. And that music was not intended to be there. That music was part of what I call the epilogue, which comes at the very end of the end credit of the film. And Stephen came and he said, you know, the trumpet trio, where the trumpets are playing. Yes, well, it's the beginning and the middle of that epilogue. He said, how do you think it would be for when Ray comes out and he sees the plane? But I thought it was an inspired idea, actually, to put that epilogue, which I wrote for some other purpose, that I hadn't expected to go there. I thought it was a wonderful solution to that moment.
It's out here.
It's not the first time he's done that. I mean, he has a very, very good suggestion of what to go where, so that the working relationship is comfortable and it's fun, but I have to think also probably at some level more efficient. It's very strong, and Rachel screams, and I don't know what the sound is going to be for the other thing, but I may be a hair early. Maybe the screen should lead it. I'm not sure about
Maybe
it.
the screen should lead the music coming in. You mean?
Possibly. I don't think we'll know that you get everything up.
Right.
But I'm a little. You're going to see it's probably a hair early. It's with the light.
Right.
And we see the light is over on the left side of the screen above, and we start right on that as though the sound effect were there, and then she screams.
Right.
know?
I think that'd be kind of interesting.
So.
It precedes it. In other words.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to, but because it's easy to slide it.
That sounds good, though.
And I feel the beneficiary of something very special. In my case, with Steve, is also working with a great friend, just like a family member.
En palabras de Steven Spielberg, Williams se ha convertido en su reescritor musical. Puede tomar un momento y elevarlo, puede hacer que se forme una lágrima en tu ojo y hacerla caer. La magia en la música de John Williams, por una parte, ha potenciado cada película que ha musicalizado y por otro lado, lleva consigo el poder y la belleza de la música misma.